and thank you for joining me today. For the longest time, I've been talking about fez hats, those red hats. Because Santa and the Pope was really my breakthrough moment when I discovered that Santa and the Pope were wearing the same hat. That really gave me a lot of, I was able to kind of change my whole looking around when I recognized that. So those hats mean something, right? And now that I'm kind of an expert on what hat psychopaths wear, it's been my theory that around the Civil War time and Gilded Age, someone took over and someone moved into those fancy, likely Muslim places. Here's what I'm thinking. The antebellum era was right before the Gilded Age. Those homes were built in that time frame and built without electricity. The people who built those homes appear to be quite advanced in architecture. It's my view that they likely knew the dangers of electricity to our bodies. They knew in advance that that's why the homes were built without electricity. So people will say, well, that doesn't make any sense. We must have electricity. Well, we come from an advanced society. They've been rolling out things that we knew about a long time ago. So they've had access to things like word processing and photograph and different ways that they've had of keeping track of things by rolling them out. Like how they didn't roll out photography until right around the time of the Civil War. Funny how that happened, right? And then, of course, they couldn't have any action shots. They could only have dead people shots. They claim because of the fluids and stuff. Well, yeah, that's one way to suppress the information now, isn't it? So, because they just could not have built those homes using horse and buggy, just would not have worked out that way. So there's something very much missing in that whole picture, even how those big homes got there in the first place. So anyhow, so the people that took over those homes, they were the ones who installed the electricity. So remember, before the Ottoman Empire collapsed, there was the Armenian genocide. And interestingly enough, come to find out, they had a new dress code. But right around the time that I'm talking about them taking over, they have a new dress code over there in the Ottoman Empire. I started out in the Ottoman Empire because I found they were selling white women as slaves there. And that was how I got the Circassian kids and that whole orphan train kids figured out. There's lots to do with how these people dress and the hats they're wearing. So anyhow, so first I'm going to start off with a story. I wrote a little story for you. In the final years of the Ottoman Empire, as the Sultan's power waned, families scattered across the world seeking fortune or refuge. Among them were the Kaya family. Some branches prospered, while others fell into poverty. This is the story of Salim Kaya, a man who crossed oceans, betrayed kin, and seized greatness, only to see it all slip beneath the waves. Salim was born to a poor branch of the Kaya family in Constantinople. His cousins lived in splendor, wealthy merchants whose homes overlooked the Bosphorus, adorned with silk draperies and gold-leaf ceilings. Salim's father died young, leaving his mother to raise him in hardship. From his earliest years, Salim watched his privileged relatives with envy that hardened into hatred. When the empire crumbled and chaos spread, many Kaya relatives immigrated to America. Some settled in New York, building grand antebellum mansions with marble staircases and gas chandeliers. They thrived in the New World, living as prince of economy, while Salim's family remained destitute. In time, Salim and his mother also crossed the Atlantic, settling into the shadows of the very cousins who had left them behind. In New York, Salim saw his cousins living in luxury. He begged them for a loan, humiliated before their servants. They laughed at him, mocking his shabby coat, his worn boots. That day, Salim vowed to rise above them by any means necessary. When the Civil War cast the city into turmoil, Salim found his chance. One cold evening, under the pretense of peace, he visited his cousins. They welcomed him with cautious hospitality. Over steaming tea in their grand parlor, Salim's hand trembled slightly as he poured the poison. By dawn, the house was silent, the cousins dead. The staff fled or silenced by fear. Amidst the confusion of war, no questions were asked. Salim inherited the mansion and all of its treasures. Years passed. Salim transformed the mansion into a palace of his own triumph. He installed electricity, a marvel that marked him as a man of progress. Chandeliers glowed where once the gaslights flickered. The fez of his childhood, once a proud symbol of Ottoman identity, he placed under glass in his study, a relic of the past he no longer honored. In its place, Salim donned the black silk top hat of the New York elite. By day, he strode down Fifth Avenue, a merchant prince. By night, he joined the Shriners, wearing the fez again, now adorned with the Crescent, scimitar, and star of the mystic shrine. To the world, he was a philanthropist, a self-made man, a bridge between East and West. Only Salim remembered the poison in the tea he gave his cousin and the path of blood that built his fortune. In 1912, Salim traveled to London on business. After months of negotiations had left him weary but satisfied, his textile empire was expanding, and he longed to return to his mansion, his triumph, his kingdom carved from treachery. For his return voyage, he booked a first-class ticket on the Titanic, grandest ship ever built on its maiden voyage. On board, Salim mingled with magnates and tycoons. His top hat was placed in a lined leather case. He carried with him a pocket containing his mother's portrait and a letter he had once written to her, promising that he would rise above all those who had wronged them. But fate, like the sea, is merciless. On the night of April the 14th, the iceberg tore the great ship open. Salim awoke to shouts, the groaning of bending steel, the tilt of the floor beneath his feet. He dressed quickly, pulling on his overcoat, and with strange defiance, placing his top hat upon his head as if to face death with dignity. On deck, chaos reigned. The cold bit through the wool and flesh. Salim stumbled, slipping on the icy boards, catching himself, running towards lifeboats already lowered. His arms flailed wildly, striking at the night as if he could push away the end. His voice rose in English and Turkish, screaming for help that would never come. Yadim, Nadim, help me, please, someone please. The sea surged forward, dragging him down, his lungs filled with icy water. His last sight was his top hat that floated beside him, bobbing on the waves, upright for a moment, proud, then claimed by the dust. News reached New York days later. Salim Kaya, financier, lost at sea, read the papers. The Shriners held a solemn ceremony. Their fezes bowed. His mansion windows were shuttered, the iron gates draped in black. Inside the glass case still holds his boyhood fez, untouched, forgotten. In time, Salim became a whispered legend, the man who wore two hats, who rose from nothing, and who fell with the Titanic. The fez and the top hat, symbols of two worlds, two lives, two legacies, one for where he came from, and one for where he was trying to go, and both lost beneath the sea. The end. So what got me started on this fez hat business? Well, because I knew that there was a group called the Shriners. They're a Masonic group. the Shriners are supposedly a group that does hospitals for children. So I knew that the Shriners wore the fez hat. And then I recognized that the fez hat that the Shriners wearing had Islamic symbols on it. So why would the Shriner hat, which the Shriners who are a Masonic group, why would it have Islamic symbols on it? And why would just about every top U.S. leader or person during that era, from FDR to John Wayne, a lot of them belonged to the Shriners or supported the Shriners, and a lot of them wore the fez hat, and the same fez hat with those Islamic symbols. Here is how it started. Because when I was looking at the fez hat again, I realized that this could be the beginning point, right? Because in 1829, Sultan Muhammad II of the Ottoman Empire made a big change. He ordered all civil officials to wear the plain fez and banned turbans. This was a key moment in the history of the Shriner's hat, also known as the fez hat. And then the story just gets so wild. So even when banned or out of style, the fez kept going. In 1925, Turkey banned it as part of modernizing. So in 1925, they actually banned people from wearing the fez hat. Gee, why is that? So, so when Turkey banned it as part of modernizing, Egypt started making fez hats for tourists to buy. So what happened was this: the Shriners International, they're the Masonic group by the Masons, and we'll get to all that here. Shriners International started using the fez hat in 1872. It was inspired by an Arabian-themed party. Today, nearly 500,000 Shriners wear it, showing their tradition and values. And there's a few different stories about why the fez hat. One story is, oh yeah, just, we're just fun-loving people, and we happen to like the fez hat, and we happen to like this Arabian theme stuff. That's one story. That's the most prominent story. Then the real story is that this has to do with Islam. So you have to wonder, why are all these people who seem to have a thing against all things Muslim, why would they be running around wearing hats with logos that represent Islam? See how this gets tricky? So let me keep reading here. So back in the 7th century, there was a Christian city in Morocco named Fez. The Mohammedans attacked it, and after a lengthy siege, they captured the city. The invaders gathered the 20,000 Christian defenders into the city square, made them dig a ditch, and put them to the sword there. When the blood of these Christian martyrs filled the ditch, the Muslims dipped their conical white hats in the blood. The Muslims then named their red hats, which incidentally carried the Islamic star and crescent emblem, the red fez. And that same red fez is worn by Shriners today. The Muslim immigrants into this country are now joining the Masonic order by the droves, seeing the order as an extension of the Allah, in whom they already believe. So, since the Masonic oath demands that a member place his loyalty to a fellow Mason above his loyalty to anything else, so-called Masonic Christians are the sworn allies of the murderers of our breathing worldwide, past, present, and future. So, yeah, it starts to take some wild turns here. So basically, remember around 1926, and I'll be getting this timeline in a minute, During the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Middle East was basically reorganized, for better use of the word. And at that time, they were assigned new flags. Well, what was put on those flags was stars and crescents. So, because a lot of flags in the Middle East have stars, crescents. For example, Turkey is a red flag with a white crescent moon and a five-pointed star, part of the Ottoman legacy. Pakistan has green with a white crescent and a star, symbolizes Islam and progress. So, Tunisia, Algeria, Azerbaijan, Malaysia, Maldives, Mauritania. Mauritania has green with a gold crescent star. Libya, Turkestan, Uzbekistan, Como. So yeah, so a lot of people where a lot of countries have that crescent and the star. But remember, these countries got those crescent and stars once they got put into place after the Middle East was split up from the Ottoman Empire. If we're to believe the history is true, this likely all got started around that time that a lot of changes were taking place. Because also a lot of US presidents and politicians have been active parts of the Shriners. The Masonic group, the Masons started this group called the Shriners, and they have this brotherhood. And as part of their brotherhood, they also have a separate entity, and that entity builds hospitals for children. Okay. But it's very suspect. And I'll be getting more into the finance and stuff in a bit here, but it's been very well supported by U.S. presidents. For example, Harry Truman, he was an active Shriner and photographed wearing the Fez hat. Warren Harding, 29th President of the United States, member of the Shriners, he's seen in parades with wearing a Fez hat. So, Franklin D. Roosevelt, though not a Shriner himself, he occasionally appeared at Shriner functions and posed in the Fez hat for charity purposes. So, yeah, so all these people show up wearing Fez hats, and during the time, Roy Rogers was huge, an actor and cowboy singer, was a proud Shriner, often photographed wearing the Fez hat at charity rodeos. Another one, Clark Gable, though not a Shriner, occasionally seen at Shriner-affiliated charity functions where he donned a Fez hat for photos. John Wayne, a supporter of Shriner causes, photographed in Fez hats at parades and benefits. Ernest Borgnine was an active Shriner. Yeah, frequently wore Fez hats. And they had these, the Shriners also were well known for the circuses they had for children, kind of spook the kids out. But first, let's have a little refresher here, okay? What exactly is Islam? Islam is a monotheistic Abrahamic religion founded in the 7th century CE by the Prophet Muhammad in present-day Saudi Arabia. The core belief is one God, is Allah in Arabic. Followers follow the Quran, the Holy Book, and the teachings of Muhammad. The 5 pillars of Islam, faith, prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage, guide Muslims' religious practices. So who are Muslims? So now we know Islam is the religion, right? So who are Muslims? Well, Muslims are simply the people who follow Islam. So if you follow Islam, the name for you is a Muslim. There are about 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide, making Islam the second largest religion after Christianity. See, I think this is because they want to get rid of all the Muslims, just like they want to get rid of all of the Christians who aren't Satanists. So Muslims are highly targeted. So let me keep reading here. So Muslims also come from many different ethnicities and cultures around the world. An Islamic country is generally defined as a country where Islam is the official state religion or where Islamic law, Sharia, influences government laws and policies. Examples include Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and others. These countries often have governments influenced by Islamic principles, but the degree of religious governments varies. So, so a Muslim majority country is one where most of the population identifies as Muslim. So, Indonesia is the largest population in the world, followed by Egypt and Turkey. A Muslim majority country is not necessarily governed by Islamic laws or officially Islamic. So here's where we get interesting, okay? We have this group called the Shriners, okay? The group I was telling you about that runs the hospitals and wears the fez hats, okay? Stick with me here for a minute. It's going to get even weirder. So what does the name for the Shriner stand for? Well, it means the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, abbreviated AAONMS, commonly known as the Shriners, is an Islamic organization founded in Mecca, Saudi Arabia in 644 AD by the family of Muhammad. It is an organization of Freemasonry. Freemasonry originates from ancient Assyrian. Members of these Shriners are called Mohammedans. So, a shrine is a tomb of Muslim that is worshipped by other Muslims. That's a shrine. Perhaps because he was a martyr for the Islamic cause, the Alawa sect of Bashar Assad does not believe in mosques. Therefore, they lift up the Shriner as being the most holy buildings of Islam. A Shriner is therefore a person who honors the holy buildings of Assad's Alawi sect of Islam. So now we get into the weeds a little bit more. The organization is best known for the Shriners Hospital for Children. They administer and the red fezzes the members wear. There are at least 350,000 members from 191 Islamic temple charters in the US, Canada, Mexico, Republic of Panama, and Europe. To join the Shriners or any other organization of Freemasonry, you must swear allegiance to Allah, the Islamic moon god, and you must do so on the Quran, which says that Christianity and Jews must be killed. So this is just the starters, right? So the Shriner symbols on their cars, trucks include the Islamic sword in the shape of a crescent moon with a star, which are clearly Islamic symbols. Another symbol on their vehicles is the Eastern Star, which is the symbol of the satanic goat god called by different names, such as Pan, Yah, Baphomet, Allah, or Mendez. You can clearly see that it's the same symbol of a two-horned star worn by admitted Satanists. So the same Shriners symbol that they wear on their cars and stuff is the same as the Eastern Star, which really means that Baphomet person, okay? And remember, Pan is another one of their gods. Pan for panic or pandemic is the word pan, okay? So Now we're getting close here. The Shriners symbols they use on those red fez hats. It's a sword, it's a crescent, and it's a star. Okay, so the Shriners, officially known as the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, use several symbols in their regalia, including the thing called a scimitar, or is a curved sword. They also use the crescent, often with the sphinx head in the center, and also the five-pointed star, which is a pentagram. These are combined into the well-known Shriner emblem. Okay, so what is a scimitar, which is a sword? The curved sword is associated historically with Middle Eastern and Ottoman military tradition. It is not specifically Islamic in religious meanings. It represents more the culture of the region, Arab, Persian, or Ottoman. Many Islamic empires and cultures use the scimitar or the curved sword, but it's not a religious symbol from Islam. It does not appear in the Quran as a symbol of the faith. So what is the crescent and the star all about? The crescent and star symbol is often associated with Islam today, mainly because it appears on the flags of many Muslim majority countries like Turkey and Pakistan. However, the crescent and star are not originally Islamic symbols. They predate Islam and were used in the Byzantine and other ancient cultures. So the crescent's moon and that star did not come from Islam. Islam as a religion does not have official symbols in the Quran or Hadith, which is the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. The crescent and star became linked to Islamic nations later through the Ottoman Empire. So right about that time that they took over the repositioned the East, that's when it came because they redesigned and gave them flags with those symbols on them. So who else uses these things? Well, the Shriners. The Shriners adopted these symbols because they wanted to give their fraternity an exotic or oriental theme when they were founded in the 1870s. Keep that date in mind. Drawing on imagery associated with the Middle East and the mystic shrine. Their use of these symbols is fraternal and theatrical, not religious. So just like that, when they're formed in 1870, and I'll get to the story in a minute, they just decide, hey, we like this Middle Eastern stuff, so let's just adopt these symbols. Well, let's see how that's working out. So in summary, these Shriner sword, crescent, and star are inspired by Islamic and Middle Eastern imagery, but they're not authentic Islamic religious symbols. The Shriners' adoption of these symbols reflect a 19th century's Western fascination with the Orient rather than the connection to Islam as a faith. So just like that, they thought, yeah, these are just the symbols for us, right? So they say the Shriner's sword, crescent, and star were borrowed to give their order a mystic Eastern or Arabian theme, reflecting 19th century fascination with the Orient. So yes, but where did they get these things from originally? Well, I hope I'm not going to shock you. The crescent and star predate Islam, right? But they are ancient pagan symbols later adopted by the Ottoman Empire and became associated with Muslim majority nations through politics, not religious prescription. So very fascinating, right? So The crescent and star that you see on all these Middle Eastern maps, the people that all worship Allah and stuff, right? Well, technically, the crescent and star predate Islam. They are ancient pagan symbols later adopted by the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire adopted some pagan symbols. Then they passed down those pagan symbols when they restructured the Middle East. See how this goes? This is why it's always important to figure out how things got started. So the Ottoman Empire, most people would probably say, yes, during the Ottoman Empire, that's how we got this crescent and this star through our thing because we were part of the Ottoman Empire. But nobody would peel back the curtain from there, right? So yeah, so it was adopted by the Ottoman Empire and became associated with Muslim majority nations through politics, not religious prescription. Matter of fact, most early Muslim buildings in the U.S. were designed by non-Muslim groups like Shriners and Masons, these synagogues. So I'll tell you the story in a minute here, how they claim that they're not really related, but I pulled together another little timeline, and it'll all be printed down below or over on my website. So, in looking back at all this, let's look at the timeline. So, start off 711 AD, we have the Muslim Berbers and the Arabs invade the Berbian Peninsula. 8th through the 15th centuries, the Moors ruled part of Iberia, that was Spain, including the Caliphate of Cordoba. Okay. Okay, listen up here. 1273, beginning of the Habsburg dynasty, with Rudolph I elected king of Germany. See, here's where we get the Germany connection, okay? Remember, the royals were the ones who started the religion, so, and I believe the gypsies are the royals, so, and they started the religions, and they started the other royal families and stuff. And that's how they built up this history. So in 1299, just shortly after that, right after the Habsburgs, the Ottoman Empire was founded by Osman I. Late 1400s, Christian reconstitution. It wasn't until the Ottoman Empire that the crescent moon became affiliated with the Muslim world, excuse me. The Ottomans adopted the crescent and star from Byzantine after conquering Constantinople in 1453. And here's where it gets good. The crescent and star were pagan and imperial symbols long before Islam. They were used by Romans, Greeks, and ancient Middle East civilizations. Their association with Islam became centuries later through Ottoman politics, not the Quran or Islamic theology. So they originated in ancient civilizations such as Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and Anatolia, where the crescent moon often represented lunar deities, and stars had various symbolic meanings. These symbols were used in classic antiquity and were later incorporated into the iconography of the Byzantine Empire. The Ottoman Empire adopted the crescent and star, and through its influence, the symbols became associated with Muslim majority countries. Importantly, the crescent and stars are not prescribed by Islamic religious texts, but gained prominence. See, they just took off from there, right? So, yeah, that's how that's how they converted some pagan, pagan symbols into everyday use, right? They say Babylonian and earlier Sumerian cultures are among the earliest confirmed users of the crescent and star symbols together. Using them as representations of divine or celestial power. In Greek and Roman religion, the crescent was associated with Armenius and Diana, respectively, both goddesses of the moon. Roman and Hellenistic coinage and civil banners sometimes featured the crescent and star, not as religious icons, but as symbols of divine favor and protection. Oh, they also have the names. They have all these names. I have, that's why I wrote them all down and they have multiple names. The one name I recognized was Ishtar. The moon is called Sin, right, or Nana. And the sun is, well, anyways, this is Babylonian and earlier Sumerian cultures. Yeah. So yeah, it didn't just happen over there the way they thought it happened, right? The city of Byzantine, which later became Constantinople and is now Istanbul, used the crescent moon on its civic emblems long before the rise of Islam. A local legend claims that a crescent moon saved the city from a surprise attack, leading to its adoption as a symbol of divine protection. The use of the crescent in this context had no connection to Islam. So I think I scored. So they said the Ottoman Empire, founded in 1299 CE, adopted the crescent and star as imperial symbols. These emblems were used on flags, military insignia, and over time became associated with the broader Islamic world. Importantly, the Quran and early Islamic texts do not mention the crescent or star as religious symbols. Yeah, so they just got adopted, right? Funny how that happened. So how does this get interesting? Well, we had the one big change that we had was that Sabbatai Sebi, Z-E-B-I. Excuse me. Okay. Post-Sabbatai Sebi era. Redrawing of the Middle East and rise of national symbols. And that is from 1666. Now pay attention to those years, okay? 1666 to 1800s. See, this is what got me started on this whole thing because I read that Zebi was forced to convert to Islam. And I thought, well, wait a minute. What's all that about? And why am I looking at Islamic symbols on the fez hat that the Shriners are wearing? So just hang in there. This will all start to make sense in a minute here. So post-Zebi era, redrawing of the Middle East and rise of national symbols, okay? After Sabbatai Zebi's conversion to Islam in 1666, the Ottoman Empire, which ruled much of the Middle East, entered a phase of increasing internal unrest and external pressure. Over the next 150 to 200 years, several key events led the groundwork for modern national identities. The Ottomans lost influence over Arab provinces, Balkans, and North Africa. Provinces like Egypt, Iraq, Arabia began asserting autonomy. There was European interference in mapping. French and British explorers, Jesuit scholars, and cartographers started redrawing maps and classifying peoples. There was a Treaty of Chimerka in 1774 that granted Russia protection over Ottoman Christians, and allowed them to interfere in the empire's internal affairs. Western imperial powers introduced national flags and symbols and even redesigned alphabets in the 19th century. Flags with crescents and stars. The Ottoman Empire used a red flag with a white crescent as early as the late 1700s. The five-pointed star was added officially in 1844 during the Tanzimat reforms, aiming to modernize the empire. So new flags emerged later across Muslim-majority regions. Tunisia, 1831, a red flag with crescent and star. Libya, Algeria, Pakistan, Malaysia, they all adopted variants of the 20th century. Many of these flags use the crescent and star as a symbolic link to Ottoman identity or Islamic heritage. Though neither is a religious requirement. The crescent moon is called Sen/Nana, was a symbol of cosmic order, divine kingship, and nighttime protection, deeply embedded in ancient Semitic and Mesopotamian consciousness. By the 17 to 1800s, as the Ottoman Empire weakened and European colonialists redrew maps, new national identities were forged, and the crescent and star were revived as symbols of Islamic power and continuity. However, their true origin is pagan and imperial, not Islamic or Qur'anic. So yeah, it's right there. By the 17 to 1800s, as the Ottoman Empire weakened and European colonists redrew maps, new national identities were forged, and the crescent and star were revived as symbols. So that's where they flipped the switch. So Islam then became satanic, right? Because the crescent and star's true origin is pagan and imperial, not Islamic. Yeah, so I have a whole timeline. I'm going to put this on hold for now. Okay, sorry, the beginning was a little bit rough, but let me try to clarify things. Let's start with the timeline here, and this really will open the eyes of things. And remember, these dates are all just dates are claiming their dates, right? So, 1519, Charles I elected Holy Roman Empire of Charles V, uniting the Habsburg dominions. So, 1519, okay. 1534, founding of the Jesuits. Their militia arm, right? The Jesuits, 1534. 1540, the Jesuits are officially approved by the Pope at that time. 1583, the Brownists, remember the people that I've been talking about, they left England for Amsterdam. So, and these dates really start to make a lot of sense now. 1613, the beginning of the Romanov dynasty in Russia. So I've been saying that Romanovs and the Habsburgs, likely the same gypsy clan running things, right? And they set up the big group over in Russia, Romanovs, 1613. And then in 1620, the Mayflower lands at Plymouth Rock. And here's where we go, 1665 to 1676, Sabbath Zevi, Messianic movement, and the conversion to Islam. Right here, this Islam thing. Supposedly, he converted to Islam to escape things, but this Islamic thing means much more than that. So, Sabbatai Zevi was a Jewish rabbi and mystic from the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey, who claimed to be the long-awaited Jewish Messiah in the 17th century. His movement began around 1665 and spread rapidly through Jewish communities across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Thousands of Jewish believers believed he would lead them back to the Holy Land, rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and usher in the Golden Age. In 1666, Sabbatai Zevi was arrested by Ottoman authorities who saw him as a potential political threat because of his messianic claims were causing unrest. Faced with execution, Sabbatai shocked his followers by converting to Islam, adopting the name Mihim Aziz. Many of his followers were devastated, but some justified or spiritualized his conversion as a man of a hidden divine plan. A small sect secretly continued to follow him while outwardly living as Muslims. The event shattered Jewish hopes at the time and had long-lasting effects on Jewish thought, including skepticism about future messianic claimants. His conversion influenced relations between Jews and the Ottoman state. The Dome group perished in the Ottoman Empire for generations, blending Jewish mysticism and outward Islamic practice. So Sabbatai Zevi was influenced by Kabbalah, a branch of Jewish mysticism. So especially by his prophet Nathan of Gaza, developed radical ideas about redemption and sin. They taught that the Messiah's role was descendant into the depths of impurity and sin to redeem the sparks of holiness trapped there since creation, a mystical concept in Kabbalah. Those Kabbalah people are all those celebrities you see, they wear those red things around their thing. That whole thing is about making sin the thing that you get. Sin is how you redeem things, not the other way around. Sometimes to complete this process, the Messiah must break conventional religion law or engage in forbidden acts, a notion called holy sin or redemption through sin. In their view, Sabbatai Zevi's bizarre behavior, including his eventual conversion to Islam, was part of a secret divine plan to bring ultimate redemption. Sabbatai and some of his followers engaged in rituals that reversed norms, declaring fast days as feast days, reciting blessings as over forbidden foods, performing acts traditionally seen as sinful, believing they were hastening redemption. These ideas directly challenge traditional Jewish law or halakha. Many rabbis and communities rejected his teachings as heretical. His fall into apostasy, which means his conversion to Islam, was seen as a tragic and embarrassing event in Jewish history. So, the crescent moon and star symbols are ancient. They were used during Sumerians and Babylonians as celestial symbols resembling moon god Sin for Nana and goddess Ishtar for the star Venus. So both civilizations, both Greek and Roman times, used the crescent and stars in coins, art, such as protective symbols. It represented lunar and astral deities, or was used for luck, protection, or sovereignty. So, when did it become associated with Islam? Islam rose up in the 7th century, around the 600s. The earliest Muslims did not use the crescent and the star. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the early caliphates had no official symbol. Their banners were usually solid black, white, or green without such imagery. The Ottoman Empire, 1299 to 1922. The Ottomans adopted the crescent and later the star as part of their imperial insignia. When the Ottoman Empire became the dominant power of the Islamic world, their crescent and star became associated with Islam through political, not religion. The modern eras, 19th to 20th century, after the Ottoman period, many Muslim majority nations incorporated the crescent and star into their national flags. Turkey, Pakistan, Tunisia, Algeria, Malaysia as symbols of heritage or unity. Well, yeah, I think because they got tricked because that was the time the satanic thing flipped, right? The crescent and star are not Islamic in origin. They are ancient pagan symbols adopted later by the Ottoman state and associated culturally with Muslim nations, but not prescribed by Islam itself. So I think we cleared that one up now, didn't we? Because they like people using their symbols the same way they have like Santa Claus as anagram for Satan, right? Same reason they have us worshiping their satanic things by Christmas. Christmas is about satanic worship, and Santa Claus is about worshiping Satan. So yeah, it's all the hidden symbols and stuff. So there's also these. I took a look into the Muslim style. They claim, okay, there are Muslim and Moorish style buildings all over this country, and they claim, oh well, it's all because of this. Well, this is what's interesting how it's claimed. It says these buildings weren't built by Muslim communities initially, but rather reflected Western fascination with Islamic architecture, especially from North Africa, Spain, and the Ottoman Empire. Many were Masonic, Shriner, or theatrical structures. See, funny thing, right? Many were Masonic or Shriners. Okay, the Shriners, the people wearing the fez hats with the Islamic logos all over them. Yeah. So what do we have first? We have the Mecca Temple in New York that was built in 1890s, later known as the New York City Center, features Islamic arches and domes. There's the Al-Makalai Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, built in 1926, a huge venue with a giant Moorish-style dome and minaret-like towers. There's a Medea Temple in Chicago built in 1912, rich in Islamic ornamentation, built by the Shriners. Hold on. It's just funny how these Shriners build all these things, all these Islamic things, right? Wait, I'll be getting to the story later in a bit here. So yeah, so um, Temple Sinai, Chicago, 1861. Yeah, original building no longer standing. One of the earliest examples. Yeah, 1861. Okay, now that's making sense, right? 1861. There's also the Mother Mosque of America in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It was built in 1934. It's the oldest standing mosque in the U.S. built by Lebanese immigrants. Then there's the Highland Park Mosque in Detroit, built in 1921. The first purpose-built mosque in the U.S. No longer standing. Too bad it's gone. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. The theaters, remember these gypsies love those theaters, right? So they have these fraternal buildings for the Shriners and the Masons, right? Um, they have synagogues that are built in Moorish revival, or let's see. So let me get down to this other list here. Okay, so now let's get back to these dates here. Okay, the last date we were at was okay. This last day was I had interjected all this stuff in that date. Okay, the last date we were at was Sabate Zivi, okay, 1666, okay. That number alone should give us cause, right? 1666. So what happened next after 1666? Well, here's where it starts to get interesting. Okay, 1666, there was the Great Fire of London. London was burned to the ground. Talk about a time for somebody to take over, right? And in 1666, the Great Fire of London. Let me see here. Where is where they had the plague? I hope I didn't miss the plague. Okay, then 1773, the Jesuits were suppressed, so maybe from starting the fire, right? In 1775 to 1783, the American War of Independence, the war that we never won. Then circa 1810, when the U.S. really became a corporation, it never had been we never have loved the king. So 1812 to 1815, the War of 1812, and that was interesting because 1812 was the year they burned everything that was in Washington at the Library of Congress. So all known records and books and stuff just all happened to get burned. Isn't that interesting, right? What a time to have things get burned. And that was around the exact same time that the Jesuits were also restored. And what happened around that same time frame? Well, that antebellum era, that era in the U.S. where growth and slavery debates and industrialization and westward expansions. And here is where it gets interesting, kind of like they're almost like they took over and now they got to change their clothing. In 1829, okay, the antebellum period was 1812 to 1861. So right here in 1829, Sultan Muhammad II of the Ottoman Empire made a big change. He ordered all civil officials to wear the fez hat. I kid you not. I kid you not. Almost like they're saying, hey, we're here. We're here. Put on those fez hats. So what happened next? 1830, the Trail of Tears, forced removal of all those Native Americans. And probably another branch of their families, right? I think these are all a whole bunch of different families of the same gypsy branch because some of them just got here earlier and some of them came in later because I've been saying like the mafia people and all them appear to have come in late 1800, first 1900s. Likely their relatives they brought in from around Italy and stuff, right? So 1839, first Opium War. Then the first need for children. 1854, those orphan trains got moving. 1861, U.S. Civil War. You notice the name Civil? Conveniently, they could not take photos of the actual action. So, yeah. And remember, a lot of these people fighting in the Civil War I've talked about were actually darker skinned. So, right around the same time, those Circassians were expelled from Russia. So that meant all of those kids for those orphan trains, they had a way to populate with all those white children, right? Circassians had white children. And of course, 1865, the Trick Amendment to abolish slavery, but really it made everybody a slave. And to show you how little, and I mean little progress we have made, 1866, that was when they laid the first oceanic cables were installed under the ocean. And that today is how our internet is still being run. These people have not been focused on all this innovation and stuff. Those are just purely Silicon Valley buzzwords to make it appear like, oh, leave it to them. They're inventing all this stuff. Don't look over that way. Look over this way. So yeah, still to this day, the internet is coming under the ocean, not from above the sky. So think about that down the road here when they start telling you that, oh, direct energy weapons, yeah, we're going to zap you from the sky. Not going to happen. I'll keep reading. So another interesting thing about that same time frame, they did the cables, 1866, right? Alfred Noble invents dynamite, 1867. Now, isn't that convenient? Their favorite tools, dynamite. What takes over next? 1870 to 1918, we have the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs Empire's rise and collapse during that exact same very convenient time frame. In 1870 to 1900s is the Gilded Age in the USA. Imagine that right at the same time as the Habsburgs are on the rise, the Gilded Age is beginning in the United States. Gee, I wonder why that is. And gee, look who's here. The Shriners, 1872. Shriners International started using the fez hat. It was inspired by an Arabian-themed party. Today, nearly 500,000 Shriners wear it, showing their tradition and values, or their affinity to who they are, right? So 1881 to 1914, that was when Africa was partitioned. 1882, gee, that's amazing. The first U.S. commercial electricity power station. Gee, right after somebody took over those houses, they got that electricity going, right? 1893, thermite reactor. Gee, their favorite tool, the thing they lay on the ground and act like they're dropping nuclear bombs. Thermite. They have a lot of people convinced that thermite is direct energy weapons. Don't be a dummy like them. It's not direct energy weapons, it's thermite. And these are very interesting when you put this into perspective because what do we have next? In 1900, Galveston. Galveston was the financial center for Texas, the huge financial center. All of a sudden got hit with hit with a big wall of water. The flooding of Galveston, 1900. Yeah, they really want to take that place out for some reason. Why? Because they were taking over and they didn't like Galveston being there. Because these people turned everything into mud. Because after they destroyed Galveston, what they turned into nothing but a cheap gambling casino. So yeah, so why oh why did they have to take out Galveston, destroy some records, get rid of some finances because people were dead and they needed to get rid of their records? Eh, and another reason to get rid of people, San Francisco, 1906, the earthquake, over 90% of the people lost their property. And so, was it about land theft? Was it about hiding old history? Or was it about they were all the way taken over and they wanted to get rid of the last remnants of the people they were probably related to who were there previous to them? Because right about then, 1906 was San Francisco earthquake. Then 1912, the Titanic sank. Makes way for the Federal Reserve in 1913. Imagine that. Then right away they're doing wars. 1914 to 1911. Don't forget, the war is World War One. It was about the Hungarian, get it? Hungarian, where those gypsies are. The empire collapsed because of one of their rulers, right? So that was what World War One is about. Gee, what happened during the same time as World War One was going on? Well, they were getting rid of all those Armenians. Armenian genocide by the Ottoman Empire. Huh, funny time to be wiping out all those Armenians who are rather white in skin, right? Whether to get rid of the adults to take those children and put them on those orphan trains to ship them around. Could have been. Very easily could have been. And around the same time, almost like they're closing up the shop, right? They're closing up the musical production. March 1917, the Romanov dynasty ends. Yeah, Romanov dynasty ends 1917 because they're going to be focused on the United States, right? What happened in the same year, 1917? Let me think here a minute. Well, wait a minute. The Balfour Declaration. That supports giving Jews their home in Palestine in 1917. Gee, they really are moving right along, aren't they? I believe they started right before this, so let me keep moving here. And gee, right, 1917 Balfour, 1918, they wiped out the Romanov family. Get rid of them. Well, because the Romanov family were a wicked, vicious group of money-grubbing psychopaths, so getting rid of them supposedly would be a good way to close out their chapter of their action, right? Besides, they were likely going to be needed for operations in the United States, so best to just say, we got rid of them all. So what's next? The 1916 to 1920 partition of the Middle East by Britain and France got rid of all those borders, mixed up those languages, and gave them flags with crescent moons and stars, almost like they're laying down their territory, right? And the criminal organization moves right along. That was 1916 to 1920s, partitioning the Middle East. And in the 1920s, hey, don't look over here. The League of Nations is founded. That was a pretty good trick, right? We're going to come in and solve these problems. And what happened in the same time frame, 1920 to 1933, prohibition in the United States. Another event that they just happened to not notice the mafia was running. They just didn't notice the mafia had grown to huge, huge levels by that time, right? And another big time of murder in fully 1921, June, Tulsa race. That was when they murdered a bunch of black people in an area called Black Wall Street. You see, a bunch of black people had the nerve to set up businesses and stuff and out there in the open trying to act like they were going to be successful and stuff. Well, they took care of them. The first time and the only time that U.S. citizens have been bombed from the sky. Pretty horrific event. But yeah, right about the same time as Prohibition got started, right? And then what happened the very next year? Well, guess what? Guess what? The Fez hat rides again. 1922, the Ottoman Empire ends. And guess what else happened? Shriners Hospital for Children opens. 1922. They actually started in 1800, but they opened their first hospital for children in 1922. And guess what? October 1928, Opus Dei, another big criminal group. They were founded in Madrid. February 1929, the Vatican was established as a Lateran Treaty. She almost like they're kind of getting everything in order, right? So then October 1929, the Wall Street crash. It begins the Great Depression. Gee, wonder why that happened right at that time. Then the 1930s, the Great Depression. And right in time, 1939, they invented and were able to make plutonium, the stuff they're using right now in our smart meters in our home, plutonium from their Pluto god. Plutonium is named after their god named Pluto. So 1939. So anyway, so then 1939 to 1975, Francisco Franco, dictatorship in Spain. That's where 300,000 children disappeared. I would have to say likely operations run by Opus Dei, but hey, put a pen in that one. We'll have to get back to that one later. These people are just full of fun and tricks and frolic. 1939 to 1945, of course, we had World War II. December the 7th, 1941, bombing at Pearl Harbor. That's a little out of order here, but OSS got started in 1942. So yeah, UN started in 1945. So you can start to see how all these things started, right? And they never left after World War II, because 1950s and 1990s, it was revealed that the Operation Gladio, that NATO and the U.S. was over there. So in 1954, the different plans. So anyway, so that was how this all got started. So supposedly, this whole thing with Shriners and having to say Allah, Allah, it's just something these people just do for fun. They even have a black group called the Prince Hall. Prince Hall was a free black man in colonial America who became a leader in the fight for civil rights for African Americans. So he is best known for founding Prince Hall Freemasonry, a branch of Freemasonry established for black men who were denied admission to mainstream, predominantly white Masonic lodges. So for the black people, they gave them this place called Prince Hall. So yeah, uh, and it's called the Ancient Egyptian Arabic Order Nobles Mystic Shrine of North and South America and its jurisdiction. Yeah, that is the whole name. And that was founded actually in 1893. Like the original Shriners, Prince Hall Shriners blend Masonic traditions with colorful Middle Eastern inspired imagery like fez hats, crest emblems, scimitars, and a strong focus on charity. So yeah, that's they have something for everything, don't they? So yeah, that's the book. Let me talk. This is what their traveling card says. Okay. Now this is a group of people who are just doing this for fun. Okay. The Shriner's traveling card reads this way: In the name of Allah, merciful and compassionate, I desire to visit a temple or shrine in many cities. He is a good man, patient, cultural, of sterling worth. Oh, this is probably something you give out. But anyways, I'll keep reading. There is no conqueror but Allah. Authorized with power by the Imperial Council, ancient Arabic Order League of the Mystic Shrine, witnessed the deputy and representation of temples in the East. Muhammad traveled from Mecca to the south, to the north in Medina. Please, Allah, we shall travel everywhere in safety. Small things influence great. Do not travel in the heat of day. Travel with your eyes and ears open. By the grace of Allah, we have found repentance. Politeness is small solver. Action is power. Everything is from Allah. There is no deity but Allah. So yeah, they say according to a manuscript, this is how two Shriners recognize each other. Question is, then I presume you are a noble. I am so accepted by all men of noble birth. Question, have you traveled any? I have. Question, from where to what place have you traveled? I traveled east over the hot burning sand of the desert. Question, where were you stopped at? At the Devil's Pass. Question, where were you requested to do? What were you requested to do? I was requested to contribute a few drops of urine. Question, why were you requested to do this? As a token of my renouncing the wiles and evils of the world and granted permission to worship at the shrine. Question, at what shrine did you worship? At the shrine of Islam. Question, did you ride? Yes, I rode a camel until I passed to dismount. Question. Then what did you do with your camel? I tied him. Question. Where did you tie him? I tied, hang on one second. I tied him to a date tree, where all true Shriners should do so. Yes, I pulled the cord, rode the hump. I have traveled the hot and souths of the desert to find peace and rest in the quiet shades of the oasis. So, yeah, and they go on to say, now remember, this is just all a joke, right? Our alliance to the right of our mystic shrine is ancient, honorable, benevolent, and secret. It is devoted to the cause of justice, truth, and mercy. It is ancient as the cornerstone of Muhammad's temple of Mecca, as secret as the Moslem, and bound the tribes of Arabia to Allah or their God, as honorable as Christian, and the tenets to which it is dedicated, when once assumed, cannot be eschewed or cast aloof. We require absolute secrecy and desire all of our disciples to hold an interest in our noble cause and a just observance of the tenets of our faith. By the existence of Allah and the creed of Muhammad, by the legacy sanctity of our tabernacle at Mecca, we greet you. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds to me like it's a pretty serious group, right? Because all this Allah business, and they call their temples, uh, temples. So anyway, so I have a lot more information down below if you'd like to take a spin further, but yeah, there's somebody has written like what they are saying is the whole past energy from, thousands of years ago, but I'm not going to be able to go through all of that because this really we're talking about the personalities of these people, and this is just one way that they've been hiding, right? Um, because in fact, this is about Islam, right? But they claim that it's not. They claim that, oh no, it's just some fun we're having. So let's take a look at some of these symbols. So there are many, and many of them are very demonic and are easily discerned as demonic at first glance. So what we want to look at is they use the Sphinx, which is the ancient Egyptian and Babylonian guardian of sacred places. And we also have on the back of the dollar bill, you have that uh, pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. So, according to New Dictionary, the Masonic Sphinx is the guardian of the mysteries and is mysteries summarized as a symbol. So then they use the letter G. You see the letter G all over the place. G is the basic Masonic symbol representing God. Later on, he's told it represents deity. So really, it belongs to, they claim that it's representation of the sun or the sun god or Sirius. But yeah, I have all of these things down below if you'd like to take a look at it. But yeah, here right on these Shriners hats and stuff, they have all of these Islamic messages, okay? And but I guess it's just for fun, right? So let's look a little bit about their history. Um, in 1870, interesting date, right? Right about the time of the Gilded Age. Several thousand of the 900,000 residents of Manhattan were Masons during that time frame. Many of these Masons made it a point to lunch at the Knickerbocker Cottage, a restaurant at 426 6th Avenue. at a special table on the second floor. So the Masons who gathered at this table were noted for their good humor and wit. They often discussed the idea of a new fraternity for Masons, in which fun and fellowship would be stressed more than ritual. Two of the table regulars, William M. Fleming, M.D., and William J. Florence, an actor, took the idea seriously enough to do something about it. So they're just sitting around this table, having a good old time and having lunch, right? But Billy Florence was a star, and after becoming the toast of the New York stage, he toured London, Europe, and the Middle Eastern countries, always playing to capacity audiences. While on tour in Marseille, France, Florence was invited to a party given by an Arabian diplomat. The entertainment was something in the nature of an elaborately staged musical comedy. At its conclusion, the guests became members of a secret society. Florence was recalling the conversation at the Knickerbocker cottage over lunch that day, realizing that this might well be the vehicle for the new fraternity. He made copious notes and drawings at that initial viewing and on two other occasions when he attended the ceremony, once in Algiers and again in Cairo. When he returned to New York in 1870, he showed his material to Dr. Fleming. Fleming agreed. Dr. William Millard Fleming was a prominent physician and surgeon. Back in 1838, he obtained a medical degree in medicine. During the Civil War, he was a surgeon. So just like that, him and his friend came up, and he was Fleming just happened to be a 33-degree Scottish Rite Mason, and so what they did was they were the ones who came up with this ancient Arabic order of the noble of the mystic shrine. Okay. So, and with the help of other Knickerbocker cottage regulars, Fleming drafted the ritual, designed the emblem in ritual costumes, formulated a salutation, and declared that members would wear the red fez hat. The initiation rites or ceremonies were drafted by Fleming with the help of three brother Masons. One of them was a lawyer and expert on Masonic ritual, the other was a printer, and the other was a linguist and ritualist. So they said the emblem, just like the Mercedes-Benz is known for its three-pointed star symbol, the Shriners fraternity is known for its crescent, or jewel of the order, carrying on the Near East theme. The emblem is composed of the claws of a tiger, united in the middle with the head of a sphinx. On the back of the emblem are a pyramid, urn, and star. Additionally, the emblem bears the motto Robot and Fureur, which means strength and fury. The crescent hangs from the Schmickdart, while a five-pointed star dangles from the Sphinx. Just as the Mercedes star represents something, domination of land, sea, and air, so does the Shriner's emblem. The Schmickdart stands for the backbone of the fraternity, its members. The two claws are for the Shriners fraternity and its philanthropy. Shriners hospitals for children. The Sphinx, the two claws are for the Shriners fraternity and its philanthropy, Shriners Hospital for Children. The Sphinx is representative of the governing body of the Shriners, while the star hanging beneath it represents the thousands of children helped by the philanthropy every year. So it says greetings and salutations. Ever since 1872, Shriners have used the salutation, which means in Arabic, peace be with you. Huh. The red fez with a black tassel is the Shriners' official headgear that has been handed down through the ages. It derives the name from the place where it was first manufactured, the holy city of Fez, Morocco. Some historians claim it dates back to about AD 980, but the name of the Fez, or taboosh, does not appear in Arabic literature until around the 14th century. One of the earliest references to the headgear is in Arabian Nights. So when was the first meeting? On September the 28th, 1872, in the New York City Masonic Hall, the first the first shrine temple in the United States was organized. Brother McElham and Dr. Fleming had completed the ritual and proposed that the first temple be named Mecca. Oh, just no coincidence of that, right? So Mecca is proposed. The original 13 Masons of the Knickerbocker Cottage lunch group were named charter members of the Mecca Temple, or the Mecca Shriners. So Noble Florence, so he's called, read a letter outlining the history of the order and giving advice on the conduct of meetings. The officers elected were Walter Fleming, Charles McClintock, Chief Rabban, John Moore, and the high priest and prophets. See these names, they don't just come out of the air. But the organization was not an instant success, even though a second temple was chartered in Rochester in 1875. 4 years after the Shriners' beginnings, there were only 43 Shriners, all but 6 of whom were from New York. So, yeah, they, it appears, well, it appears to me like this is the plan, right? Let me see here. So they claim that it was in 1980, excuse me, in 1878, there were 425 Shriners and 13 temples. Yeah, while the organization was still primarily social, instances of philanthropic work became more frequent. During the 1888 yellow fever epidemic in Jacksonville, Florida, members of the New Morocco Shriners, so members of the New Morocco Shriners, just I'm sure that's another coincidence, right? So they have a group called the New Morocco Shriners, and the Masonic Knights Templar worked long hours to relieve the suffering populace. In 1889, Shriners came to the aid of Johnstown flood victims in 1898. So yeah, there were 50,000. Yeah, they're really growing like hotcakes, aren't they? So yeah, they're definitely Masonic Freemasons, that whole group. Um, so evolution of the philanthropy. The shrine was unstoppable in the early 1900s. So that's when they started coming up with building this up, and I think that's when they came up with the first church. But here's where their connection is this. In 1919, uh, they've been searching for a cause for the thriving group to support. In a visit to the Scottish Rite Hospital for crippled children in Atlanta, they became aware of the overwhelming needs of crippled children in North America. So yeah, so they came up with the Mystic Shriners Peace Memorial for friendless, orphan, and crippled children. So yeah, that's how they cook that deal up. Well, also remember, if you're a psychopath, no better way to start your charity than with children, and even better if you started with crippled children, right? So, and I'm not obviously saying anything against crippled children. I'm saying they pick somebody that's very vulnerable because obviously, I mean, I don't know completely, but I did look at their books and what they're doing as far as money, and it appears like there's funny things going on, but um, that's really for another day, right? But what better way to hide money than to say that you're doing something for children? Because at every corner, if somebody says, "Are you hiding money? Or are you doing this?" Ah, what kind of person are you? Blaming somebody who's dedicated their life to children and crippled children of all children. See how that works? So, yeah, they get their hand in the door for those donations because I'll have more about that in a bit because the Shriners Hospital doesn't really donate very much at all. So let me put this on hold now. Okay, let's get back to history here. This is where it appears to me, at least, the crime got started. The Ottoman Empire, 1299 to 1922, was an Islamic empire. Forgot that word Islam in there, right? The sultans were Sunni Muslim rulers who held the title Caliph after 1517, meaning they were considered the leaders of the Islamic world. Islamic tradition deeply shaped Ottoman law, art, architecture, dress, including the fez hat, and daily life. And I believe they're the exact same people here. And the ones who came here to this country, instead of, they couldn't wear the fez hat. I'll get to that in a minute. So they were wearing the top hat, which is really the fez hat with a brim on it to hide the fez hat, right? Because the top hat was something that only the elites were wearing. So let me keep reading here. So this whole Islamic tradition thing came from the Ottoman Empire, is how the story goes, right? The crescent and star associated today with Islam became linked with the Ottoman Empire and was featured on its flag. The Shriners, which was the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, was founded in 1870 in New York and was created as a fun offshoot of Freemasonry. The group adopted Middle Eastern, Arabic, and Islamic inspired imagery for its rituals, regalia, and symbolism, including the fez, the shimigak, the crescent, the stars, and pseudo-Arabic names. However, the Shriners themselves are not a Muslim organization. They use Islamic symbolism in a theatrical, exoterical way, reflecting 19th century fascination with the Orient, but without religious affiliation or intent. But they do have shared symbols, right? That fez hat, the fez hat is everyday headgear in the Ottoman Empire, symbol of Islamic identity and Ottoman reform. So it is also the ceremonial headgear of the Shriners, who signify fraternity and charity. The crescent and the star, symbols of the Ottoman Empire and later Islam, also used on Shriner emblem purely as decorative and mystical imagery. The Schmicktal, or that curved sword, an iconic curved sword in Islamic and Ottoman art. is also part of the Shriner emblem, symbolizing the strength of the fraternity. So the name, they also had a name. They have a group, I couldn't miss it. They have they have a group called the ISIS Shriners. Now that isn't kind of a giveaway. I don't know what is. The ISIS Shriners. I was looking through this list of Shriners and I saw they have one named Isis, okay? The name origin. The temple is named after Isis, the ancient Egyptian goddess of magic, motherhood, and fertility. As with other Shriner temples, like the Syria, there's also a Syria temple, El Bakal, al-Makalik. The name was chosen to evoke mystery and grandeur associated with the Orient, as imaged by 19th century Westerners. The Isis Shrine is located in Salina, Kansas. It was founded and chartered in 1887, part of the rapid expansion of Shriners across the U.S. during that period. Well, were they in some rush because they just took over? So, of all places, the ISIS Shriners are in Salina, Kansas, 1887. See, another kind of curious date, right? And here's what they say about that. The ISIS Shriners, like other Shriner temples, adopted a name that linked to Islamic or ancient Middle Eastern symbolism, but purely for show, spectacle, and fraternal identity in the U.S. Well, fraternal identity in the U.S. is in fact true, right? If your gypsy clan got over here and you want to wave and nod to them, well, then yeah. And people will say, yeah, but how do other people aren't members? Yeah, a lot of people could become members that aren't part of the core group, right? Because these people would rob anybody. So they want to let these black people become members. They want these people to become members. So anyway, so yeah, so they claim it's for show, spectacle, and fraternal identity. Yeah, I think it's fraternal identity. So the Moors were Muslim inhabitants of North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, and Portugal, Sicily, and Malta during the Middle Ages. Historically, they are associated with the Islamic rule of parts of Europe from 8th to 15th century. In some esoteric and fraternal traditions, like the Moorish Science Temple or some interpretations of Freemasonry, the Moors symbolize ancient wisdom, lost empires, or hidden knowledge from the East. Well, also the Moors could also be the same people running the Masons or the Shriners, right? People have many different costumes they're wearing. The Shriners, or the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, was founded in 1870 in New York by Freemasons who wanted to add fun and fellowship to their fraternal activities. Their symbols, the crescent, shmiktar, star, sphinx, pyramid, and fez hat, deliberately draw on imagery from the Islamic world, the Moors, and the Middle East, but in a romanticized, exoticized way that has little to do with ancient Islam or Moorish culture. The red fez and Arabic names on temples like the Syrian, the Mecca, or the Isis temple were meant to create a sense of mystery and spectacle. Oh yeah, just like that, right? You make buildings with spectacle names, you put these logos, oh yeah, just as part of the joke, right? So they're always dragging these Phoenicians in there. They say the Phoenicians were an ancient seafaring civilization from the eastern Mediterranean, parts of Syria and Israel. Uh, The Phoenicians are often linked to theories about hidden influences on later civilizations, including Freemasonry, Moorish science. Yeah, the Phoenicians. Some of these fake researchers, they hang their hats on. Oh, it's all the Phoenicians got to be. Only thing it is. But let's stick with what we know here. So, Freemasonry originated in medieval Europe, mainly Britain and Scotland, as guilds of stonemasons that evolved into fraternal and charitable societies by the 17th century. So, yeah, Freemasonry, okay, originated in Europe, medieval Europe, mainly Britain and Scotland, okay? It drew on biblical stories like the building of Solomon's temple for symbolic teachings. So their Freemasonry started 17th century, but the Shriners were founded in 1870 in New York by a group of Freemasons who wanted a more festive social branch. They added Mideastern flair purely for style and pageantry, not because of direct cultural lineage. So, yeah, I would think that they seem like they're pretty close if you ask me, but hey, every person for themselves, right? So what is the question? So why do Shriners and Masons use these symbols? Well, in the 18th and 19th century, Western fraternal societies borrowed heavily from Middle East, North African, and ancient Mediterranean symbols to make their rituals seem ancient and mysterious, inspire loyalty and brotherhood using a shared imagined history, or to create theatrical, elaborate ceremonies that set them apart from other groups. Or, or they say the crescent, the Shmiktar, the Sphinx, and the pyramids and stars in Shriner emblems represent this fascination, not a true cultural or organizational link. Or they're looking back at their his story books, right? Because all this stuff about the pyramids, how exactly, here again, how exactly did they get all of those pyramids built and drag all that stuff across all that land? What, by a bunch of camels? I don't think so. I think what they're telling us is this is when this particular group took over, is what we're finding out here. At least that's my impression so far. So, they say the Masons and Shriners do not have actual historic ties to the Moors or Phoenicians. Their use of related symbols reflect Western fascination with those cultures in the 18th and 19th centuries. So, uh, in some mind, they probably do, right? Um, so anyway, so among these Shriners, a lot of people were Shriners. Gerald Ford, um, Warren Harding, the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover. Um, he was actually a Shriner member. Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren, General Douglas MacArthur. Yeah, I think the Shriners were founded by a pretty elite group of people, right? And who starts their own elite groups? Well, they do. Some current ones, 50 Cent, Aaron Rodgers, Alicia Keys, Justin Timberlake. Let me see, they actively support Shriners Hospitals for Children, but I don't know if they're actually members, but you get the picture, right? So Shriners definitely is for sure an elite thing. So here is how the story goes. In 1870, William Florence, a world-renowned actor, while on tour in Marseille, France, was invited to a party given by an Arabian diplomat. The entertainment was something in the nature of an elaborately staged musical comedy. At its conclusion, the guests became members of a secret society. Florence took copious notes and drawings at his initial viewing and on two other occasions, once in Algeria and once in Cairo. When he returned to New York in 1870, he showed his material to Fleming. Fleming took the ideas supplied by Florence and converted them into what would become the ancient Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, or AAONMS. Fleming created the ritual, emblem, and costumes. The group adopted a Middle Eastern theme and soon started establishing temples. The first temple established was the Mecca Temple, established at the New York City Masonic Hall. In 1875, there were only 43 Shriners in the organization. So, despite its Oriental theme, the Shriners is a men's fraternity not connected to either Arab culture or Islam. Boy, you sure could have fooled me. To further minimize confusion with religion, the use of the words temple and mosque to describe Shriners' buildings has been replaced by Shrine Center, although some individual local chapters are still called temples. Drawing too much attention, probably, huh? Gotta change the name on that building. So, Shriners often participate in local parades, and they have an Oriental band dressed in cartoonish versions of Middle Eastern dress, pipe bands, drummers, motorcycle units, and even traditional bands. They've even gathered at the White House many times. Gee, they got into the White House, huh? So, yeah, U.S. Presidents Truman, Franklin Roosevelt, Gerald Ford, Chief of Defense Omar Bradley, Douglas MacArthur were known to be affiliated with the Shriners. So, yeah, pretty big group of people, if you ask me, just having fun, right? Just having some fun. That's all they want to do is wear those red fez hats and just dance around and have some fun because only so many of them could wear those top hats. This got me started because the other day I saw a picture of, who is it, William over in the UK? He was wearing a top hat. Well, I believe that they started wearing top hats to hide the fact of who they were from the Ottoman Empire. So they started wearing top hats to hide who they were, but they really couldn't hide it that well. So they came up with this Shriners group. Probably just as simple as that, right? Hey, we're gonna act like we're a charity for children. Pretty good thing, right? And we can wear our red fez hats and nobody will be the wiser. Yeah, we're gonna put all these Islamic symbols on it that we cooked up during the Ottoman Empire. So to me, now I'm not telling anybody who practices Islam what to do, but it appears to me like, and people will say, well, the Quran has 1,000 pages, and we know that's true. Well, I don't know who has those 1,000 pages. I mean, who's been in charge of the 1,000 pages that supposedly the Quran is written on? I mean, who's been in charge of these people, right? I mean, after all, they went in early 1900s. They broke up all of the borders, which meant they broke up languages, they broke up cultures. So if you're going to go in to hide some things that you've done in a pretty big way, probably the best way to do it would be to do exactly that. Go in there and break up the whole culture. Get the borders all messed up so nobody knows really what borders from where. Or one family gets living on one side of the border, the other side of the family. This is a whole thing about order out of chaos, right? So it would make perfect sense that they would go in and blast apart all of those borders and stuff, and then I don't know, maybe they did practice Islam. So then they're the ones that say, oh well, let's have these new flags and stuff, because by then they have things so screwed up that who knows what's up, right? So by then the UK and France and them got to design those flags the flags became satanic symbols. Really as simple as that, just like how people thought they were escaping freedom of religion, but they didn't really realize that the U.S. was set up on the basis of Satanism, right? So I don't know. So it looks to me that that could have been like the path that they did that because yeah, they even have the Allah in there. So to say it's just for fun and charity just doesn't seem to really cut it for me. But so there were a lot of Roma people during the Ottoman Empire. There were a lot of Romans or Gypsies in the Balkans. They were all in Turkey. They're all in Levant, Egypt, and North Africa. Some minority groups. So uh, I've got all the population figures down below. So the word Ottoman, the Ottoman Empire was named after its founder Osman, who lived from 1258 to 1326, with a Turkish leader who established a small principality in northwestern Anatolia around 1299. So, you know, you have to come up with a certain story, right? I believe they wrote the whole front part of the story of history, and then the Ottoman Empire, something happened there. Was it specifically the Ottoman Empire or Turkey? Well, could be, but it strikes me as because it was right after the Ottoman Empire breaks up that the World War One started, and also by World War One, these people always kind of have a timeline of how long they can be around other people, right? Because they're psychopaths. So this is an interesting line. By World War One, which was 1914 to 1918, the Ottoman Empire was called the sick man of Europe, struggling to hold itself together. So here again, something was going on, and I have all the information down below. The Middle East was broken up under the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, right at the time of the Ottoman Empire. So that blew that whole area up, and also it gave them satanic symbols for their messages. They think that Islam is good, right? So here is where it really got interesting because um, what better way when you take over an empire than to make sure that everybody looks more, let's say, appropriate? So the Ottoman Empire and decline and fall shattered the old imperial unity of the Middle East. The British, French, and other powers redrew the map, laying the groundwork for many of today's Middle Eastern states and many of its enduring conflicts. So what did they do? Well, there were new clothing reforms. I kid you not. There were new clothing reforms were about erasing markers of religious, ethnic, or class difference that had been visible in the Ottoman headgear and robes. So the person in charge, Ataturk, wanted people to look more like modern Europeans. No more turbans that mark clerics. No more fez hats that mark the Ottoman bureaucrats. No more robes that divided the religious scholars from others. So now why would that be that they have to take off those fez hats, right? Kind of because somebody took somebody over, or something was going on over there in that region. I just have a lot of questions. So yeah, that was the part that really got me. Hey, take off those fez hats. We're joining the rest of the world. So yeah, come on, you fellow gypsies, let's get dressed up like everybody else. So it's also interesting because who else wears turbans? Well, gypsies, right? Uh, and around that same time, you have the Armenian genocide, another way for them to get Get a whole bunch of white kids, right? That Armenian genocide, right there, 1915. So get this. They actually had something called the Hat Law of 1925. Yeah, 1925, the Republic of Turkey, which was what it was called after Ottoman, okay? So 1925, the Republic of Turkey, under Mustafa Ataturk, passed what's called the Hat Law on November 25th, 1925, banning the fez and promoting European-style hats as part of broader cultural reform. So right there, they passed a law banning the fez hat. So why is that? Why is that? Because they didn't want anybody to know who they were? Seems awfully suspicious to me. So yeah. Um, so because by 1925 you'd have the genocide of the Armenians with 1915 and 1917. The Ottoman Empire was officially ended on 1922. So yeah, Ottoman Empire ends. They pass a law to get rid of those fez hats and those robes. So, and the Armenian genocide happened before the hat law, but during the Ottoman period. So the hat law came after the empire's collapse as part of their effort to create a new, secular, homogeneous Turkish nation, one in which minorities, including Armenians, Greeks, and others. Oh, yeah. Okay, whatever. Yeah. So, yeah. Why, why make these laws, right? If they're not trying to do something. And they actually had this whole speech. It said, there was a hat speech in 30th August 1925. It said, we see that in civilized nations, the hat is the headgear that distinguishes civilized people all around the world. It is the head covering for a civilized nation. It is necessary for the Turkish nation to show through its exterior as well as its interior that it is civilized. We shall wear a hat on our heads. The people of Turkey, who have proved in every respect that they can and will keep up with the world civilized nations, will show that they also value this reform. The hat is nothing more than a form of headgear. The aim is to eliminate outdated symbols that separate us from the modern world and to remove head coverings that represent ignorance or backwardness. The nation that has won such a great victory in the field of civilization will not hesitate over such a small matter as changing its hat. A civilized nation's headgear is its hat. From now on, we shall not let our heads be a sign of ignorance. So, some key points in his speech. Ataturk linked the hat directly to civilization, progress, and modern identity. He framed the hat reform as a symbolic break with the Ottoman past, especially with turbans and fez hats associated with religious or outdated identities. The speech also emphasized that adopting modern headgear was a small but necessary step in Turkey's larger journey toward joining the civilized world. This speech helped pave the way for the hat law that still cracks me up. Who would have guessed, right? Who would have guessed so much to do with fez hats, right? And all along you probably thought I was being crazy, right? I just knew all along it had something to do with fez hats. I just really had not gotten back to look at it. And then when I got back to look at the Shriners, and I saw all the people wearing fez hats and stuff. Well, something's going on with fez hats. So, okay, so it says, this speech helped pave the way for the hat law of 25 November 1925, which outlawed the fez and mandated European-style hats for men. It was part of Archduke's sweeping efforts to secularize and modernize Turkey, alongside reforms like the alphabet change, legal codes, and dress codes. Yeah, you gotta tell me something happened at that point. It said the hats that became popular in Turkey after the fez ban were precisely those worn by working class men, clerks, professionals, and urban businessmen in Europe at the time. And here's where it really gets crazy. Now, I didn't just get my degree in understanding about hats just for nothing, right? This is what makes it all worthwhile because, okay, so he came up with these approved hats, okay? Well, these were hats, approved hats in Turkey, right? So where did these hats become popular? Well, in Europe and also in the United States. Remember all those gangster movies they all wore fedora hats? So the approved hats were the fedora, the most iconic replacement worn by middle-class professionals, shopkeepers, and intellectuals, seen as stylish, modern, and functional, appropriate for daily city life, or being a gangster, right? Um, then the bowler or the derby hat, popular among European workers, civil servants, and tradesmen. Durable, low profile, practical, no aristocratic pretensions. Then there was the flat cap. All those newspaper boys, they wore a flat cap. For newspaper boys or ivy caps. The flat cap was commonly among industrial workers, rural folks, and other urban lower middle class. Cheap, easy to wear, and associated with the working man. And then there were peaked caps worn by police, railway workers, and uniformed civil employees, representing order, function, and the new secular state. So those were all the caps that he wanted. And so what was rejected? The fez hat, which was a symbol of Ottoman hierarchy, Islamic identity, and imperial past. And isn't that funny that then they bring the fez hat to be the Shriners and they put all those logos and stuff on it? Also, the turban was also rejected, seen as backwards, too tied to religious and class distinction. But here's a catcher because I was really looking into this top hat, and but Antark did not wear. He did not approve of the top hat, but Antark did wear top hats on formal ceremonial occasions, for example, at balls, receptions, and diplomatic functions. In these settings, the top hat was part of Western-style formal dress, along with tailcoats and white ties. This was to show that Turkey's leadership could stand as equals among European elites. So they all wear the top hat, right? Because the top hat belongs to all of them, right? So because they believe that clothing reflected identity, values, and alignment with civilization. Ottoman dress, with its turbans, fez hats, flowing robes, and religious markers, symbolized the old, backward-looking empire. European-style dress signaled modern equality and progress. So by changing dress, he aimed to break ties with the Ottoman and Islamic past, break visual unity. One modern, secular Turkish identity, align Turkey with Europe politically and culturally. So yeah, so I mean, right there, you take over a place, right? You want to start pass law, they get those fez hats off your head. You're just gonna wear fedoras. So yeah, because here's some examples. In 1910, a civil servant in the Ottoman in Istanbul would wear a long robe, a sash belt, a fez hat, or a turban. A civil servant in 1930, after Antok took over, would be wearing a three-piece suit, a necktie, a fedora, or a bowler hat. So, yeah, I don't know. So turbans, turbans or similar head wraps, where do those come from? Where do they come from? Roma. Who wears turban? Well, I think Romans do. Turbans or similar head wraps still are commonly among many communities, including groups the Romas descended from. So yes, so the Romas, remember, came out of India, and that's where they come up with those turbans from. So they banned turbans and fez hats. See, they were kind of trying to join the times. So I don't know. If you're taking over, I think the best way to do it would be to get everybody to dress the same way. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here for a second. Because in the Ottoman Empire, which ruled areas where many Roman gypsies lived, like the Balkans and Anatolia, turbans were common headgear among many communities, not just Muslim. Romans living in Ottoman Empire could also be seen wearing simplified turbans, fezzes, or local headgear. In Ottoman regions and earlier in India, some Roman gypsies did wear turbans or turban-like wraps. So yeah, they wear those turbans when they're telling people's fortune and stuff. So I think we got the picture on what these hats all have all to mean, right? I'm gonna put this on hold, wrap this up here for a second. Okay, so the top hat. The top hat wasn't exactly on his list of approved hats, but he was seen wearing a top hat himself. And like all the people that were on the elites that were traveling, like on the Titanic, for example, they would all be wearing top hats, which I'm saying are really a fez hat with a brim. So where does the top hat come from? Well, 1797. The most famous early account describes haberdasher John Heatherton allegedly wearing a tall silk hat on the streets of London. According to a story in the newspaper, his appearance caused such a stir that women fainted, children screamed, and dogs barked. And Hetherington was reportedly fined for creating a public disturbance. So early 1800s, the top hat became increasingly popular among gentlemen. It was initially associated with a modern, forward-looking style that set the wearer apart from other fashion, like the tipcore or bicomb hats. So, 1790 to 1810, the top hat begins to replace the earlier styles. 1810 to 1830, it becomes a standard for upper class and professional men in Britain, France, and later USA. Mid-19th century, the top hat has reached peak popularity with variations in height and crown shapes. Some call the stovetop hats. Late 19th century, while some still use for formal occasions, the top hat gradually yields to the bowler and fedora for daily wear. But no, they're still wearing that top hat. The earliest top hats were made of beaver felt, prized for its smooth, water-resistant, later plush. Um, so yeah, I would say that because it comes from Morocco, they're somewhere from that region or Morocco or somewhere over that because Morocco is where the fez hat comes from, right? So the fez hat became a key part of official dress during the Ottoman Empire, especially under Sultan Muhammad, 1808 1839. So, yeah, and then they started modernizing in 1826. So, something happened with this fez hat. Why'd they pass laws about what hat you can wear, right? Uh, because the hat law of 1925, the fez hat was banned. Yeah, you're trying to get rid of your past, but then why would you form this group over here, a Masonic group, right? For the Freemasons, everybody's favorite buzzword, right? They set up the Shriners, and what hat do they wear? But nothing but the fez hat. Kind of like hiding in plain sight, if you ask me. So, yeah. And you got all these temples named by all these different names. You got the Isis temple, you got the Syria temple. I don't believe that for a second. I mean, it's a pretty nice little cover story, right? That they came across all this stuff because remember they claim that the origins of early Muslims in America was the enslaved Africans, 1600 to the 1800s. The first significant Muslim population in what became the U.S. were enslaved Africans. Many came from regions with strong Islamic traditions. Mali, Futa, yeah, modern Nigeria. These areas were part of Islamic empires or influenced by Islamic law, but not Ottoman control. So yeah, in the 19th century, immigrants from the Ottoman lands, late 1800s to early 1900s, many early Muslim immigrants came from Greater Syria, today's Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Jordan, which were regions under Ottoman rule. Others came from Albania, Bosnia, Kosovo. Those were Ottoman Empire in Europe. A small number came from Turkey proper, Anatolia, or Yemen and North Africa. So, yeah, all these Muslim country people coming in here, right? Well, some of them, I would say that, yeah, I would say some Muslim people came in and there was a whole bunch of them, and somehow some fighting happened around the Civil War time. They burned up all the records in Washington. But they had to cling on to that fez hat, right? That fez hat is what ties them all together. So I don't know. It appears to me that the fez hat, the Shriners, they're the same group as the Freemasons, that all these high people are wearing this stuff. And if you look at the bottom of the file over on my website, I pulled up some current statistics on Turkey is a pretty decent sized trafficking hub to this day. I think Turkey is a key thing in these people's world. Something happened when those Armenians got when they slaughtered all those Armenians. They may have been slaughtering the Armenian adults so they could steal all the children to populate to get the white people thing going. See how that could have worked out? Because it was around that area that they were trying to repopulate places with white children because the base population was darker skin. At least that's how I see it now. Um, because why else would they make their logo on the hat they're wearing something that's Islamic? Why did the Islamic logo and stuff change at the same time the Ottoman Empire was supposedly taking over. Well, they got a lot of explaining to do, right? So it appears to me that these likely could be the core group of people that essentially are running things right now. Um, they were a group of gypsies. They started off over there in Spain. If you look at the timeline I have put together down below, about their time they're coming over here from Spain. Um, Christopher Columbus is going on. The Jews are supposedly being kicked out of Spain. Same time period, 1492 time frame. So you got a lot of time play to take a look at. Why they blow up Galveston, a major financial center? Well, because I think they take it over and they wanted to get rid of what was there. And what better way to get rid of all the records than to, a big wall of water came after them. So they took it from a what would be considered an advanced society and put it into what is their abode into more of like a slum-like area. I'm not saying the whole place is now a slum, but you get what I'm saying. It was very advanced and it was rebuilt to be more of a lower slum kind of casino kind of a place, right? It did not return to being some global financial place. So that also speaks to a big takeover. You had San Francisco earthquake right at the same time frame. So many people lost their homes during that time. What were they doing? Cleaning up from whoever they were getting rid of. And that was about the same time they were moving into all those homes and stuff. So I sort of think that's around the time. And, just like memories, right? They want to have their memories of who they really are and they're proud of them. So they're major, major liars. So I still think they're gypsies. They've come under many, many disguises, many names. So it would make total sense that they'd have those kind of, they turn those Islamic symbols into something kind of, I don't know, wild and more fanciful looking, right? Or something you see on a street corner kind of a thing versus in a, I don't know. But if you look around through other regalia, like in the Catholic Church and stuff, they really kind of like that, outgoing kind of big wild gold robes and big fish hats. And I mean, it does kind of, it does kind of suit their style, right? Um, because, they're gypsies and they're hiding as royals. They're hiding as the ruling class. And they put together this whole dance and game. You can see it right now in social media. It's such a big drama wash. But anyways, I said all I have to say. That's what the deal is with these Fez hats. So the question remains, why did they get banned? And then why did they get revived and to be born for the Shriners Hospital for the children deal, which has some pretty suspicious looking financial things, but not really the point for today. But yeah, so why did the Fez hat get revived as the Shriners? And then they come up with all these stories that, oh, we just really like these things, these Arabic things. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Down below at my show notes on my website, I have a couple different articles. One person did go through all of the old history reasons from thousands of years ago. So that's all lying there. They connected all those dots. Personally, I think a lot of those really way, way, way back dots are part of just what they dreamed up so they can then justify what they're doing now, right? Of course, they would say all these things are going on. So anyways, but I have all the information available for you to take a look at it. So it's just for my purposes and trying to explore how these people operate and most importantly, who is beneath that Fez hat. That's as far as I'll be exploring it for right now. So be safe out there and goodbye for now.